Tito Traversa, gear malfunction, age 12. Let's start with a case that shook the entire climbing world, not because of a daredevil stunt gone wrong, but because a young prodigy did everything right and still didn't make it home. Tito Traversa wasn't just your average 12-year-old. This kid had been scaling rock faces since he was 6, pulling off climbs that most seasoned adults wouldn't dare attempt. By the age of 10, he was already crushing grade 8 routes, which are no joke in the climbing world. But in July 2013, during a trip to the scenic limestone cliffs of Orpierre, France, one tiny oversight cost him his life. The problem wasn't Tito's skill or attitude, it was gear, specifically quick draws. These are basically safety connectors used to clip a climber's rope to the wall. Tito's quick draws had rubber keepers on them, which are supposed to hold the metal carabiner in place. The key word here is supposed to. What nobody realized was that 8 out of 10 of his quick draws had been assembled completely wrong. The carabiners weren't looped through the strong webbing as they should have been. They were clipped into the rubber piece only. That rubber wasn't meant to bear weight. It was basically cosmetic. Even worse, the gear wasn't even his. It had been borrowed, handed down, and no one had checked it. As Tito climbed, he unknowingly clipped into those faulty draws, one after another. When his foot slipped about 65 feet up, the safety system failed in a horrifying chain reaction. Every drawer ripped out. There was no slack, no catch, just the sound of shoes scraping rock, and then silence. Paramedics rushed him to a hospital, but he died the next day. The heartbreaking part? He had climbed like a pro. The mistake was made by an adult who assembled the gear without knowing what they were doing. That one careless setup turned into involuntary manslaughter charges and a worldwide reminder: check your gear. Even the best climbers can't survive faulty equipment. 1996, Mount Everest disaster. Pride and poor timing. Mount Everest has taken more than 300 lives, but one day in 1996 stands out for how totally avoidable it was. You've probably heard about it in documentaries, or maybe the book Into Thin Air. What went down was a combination of ego, pressure, and people just not knowing when to turn back. It was May 10th, and 2 big guided teams, one led by Rob Hall from Adventure Consultants, and the other by Scott Fisher from Mountain Madness, were going for the summit. These weren't amateurs. These were veteran climbers with loads of experience, and they both knew the Golden Everest rule: turn around by 2 p.m. no matter what. That day, more than 30 climbers were stacked up near the summit, forming what was basically a traffic jam on the side of the world's tallest mountain. Time was ticking. Oxygen was running low. But still, they pushed ahead. By the time the last of the teams reached the top, it was already after 3:30 p.m. Then came the blizzard. A whiteout slammed into them with zero warning, winds screaming like jet engines, visibility gone. People got separated, ropes disappeared, and many simply collapsed in the death zone, where oxygen levels are so low your body is literally dying. Rob Hall radioed from the south summit. He was trapped, out of oxygen, but stayed behind to comfort a client. His last words were broadcast to base camp: "Please don't worry too much." The next morning, he was found sitting upright, frozen solid, still clipped to the rope. 8 people died that night, not because they were reckless, but because they broke the most basic rule of Everest. Time matters more than distance. They were close, but not close enough. 2008 K2, catastrophe, overcrowding and icefall. K2 might not be as famous as Everest, but it's a different kind of beast. Sharper, deadlier, and far less forgiving. For every 4 climbers who summit K2, 1 doesn't make it back. In August 2008, more than 30 climbers from 11 different expeditions made a final summit push. It looked like the perfect day, but as usual, The problems didn't start with weather. They started with crowding. There was only one fixed rope on the infamous bottleneck section, which meant every climber had to clip into the exact same line, one at a time, while standing underneath a massive serac, a towering block of unstable ice the size of a building. It was like setting up a picnic under a grand piano hanging by a thread. Climbers summited by early afternoon, but descending proved a nightmare. Then, the serac finally gave way. A huge piece snapped off, slicing the fixed line and dragging climbers into nothingness. Those above had no way down. Those below had no chance to move. Survivors described bodies hanging from ropes, others stumbling in the dark, lost in hallucinations from exhaustion and lack of oxygen. 11 climbers died that day. The reason? Not a storm, not bad gear. Just too many people, too little coordination, and no backup plan. K2 doesn't care about your schedule. It just waits for someone to make a mistake. 1967 Mount McKinley/Denali disaster. Ignored storm warnings. Now called Denali, North America's tallest peak has a reputation for destroying overconfidence. And in 1967, it handed out a brutal lesson to a group of young climbers from the Joseph Wilcox expedition. They weren't thrill seekers. These were college kids, trained, organized, and serious about climbing. Their plan was to ascend via the Harper Glacier route, one of the toughest paths on the mountain. Problem was, the mountain had other plans. By mid-July, the team reached their high camp at nearly 18,000 feet, but a massive storm was already moving in. Radios crackled with weather warnings. Other teams turned back. Wilcox and his group? They pressed on. They had something to prove. At 19,000 feet, they got caught in whiteout conditions with 100 miles per hour winds and minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures. The last radio call came in, "We're okay." Just cold. That was the last anyone heard from them. It took 10 days for rescuers to get up there. What they found was haunting. Tattered tents, shredded sleeping bags, and the bodies of all 7 climbers frozen in place. Some still roped together. Others half buried in snow pits where they'd tried to wait it out. They weren't under-equipped. They weren't untrained. They just didn't turn back when they should have. Denali doesn't play games. Aconcagua, 2023. Ignored acclimatization. At nearly 23,000 feet, Argentina's Aconcagua is the tallest peak in the Americas. While it doesn't require technical climbing gear on its normal route, altitude makes it incredibly dangerous, especially for those who treat it like a hike. In January 2023, 2 climbers made the same fatal mistake, rushing. The first was a 49-year-old Polish man, experienced but impatient. He skipped the acclimatization process entirely. Instead of gradually ascending over a week, he tried to summit in 3 days. Big mistake. At 6,000 meters, he started showing classic signs of altitude sickness, confusion, dizziness, slurred speech. Fellow climbers begged him to turn around. He didn't. Just below the summit, he collapsed. By the time rescuers reached him, his lungs were filled with fluid. It was over. Barely 2 days later, a 40-year-old American woman suffered the same fate. She made it to the Independencia shelter, but became unresponsive on the descent and died shortly after. There were no storms, no avalanches, just clear skies and fatal decisions. Local rescue teams later said the mountain didn't kill them, their decisions did. Selfie cliff deaths, Yosemite 2018, social media gone fatal. Social media has changed the way people climb. For some, it's not about the mountain anymore, it's about the photo. And sometimes, chasing that perfect shot becomes a fatal obsession. In October 2018, travel bloggers Vishnu Viswanath and Meenakshi Murthy a married couple known for their stunning, risky cliffside selfies, fell to their deaths at Yosemite's Taft Point. They had thousands of followers and a feed full of breathtaking high-risk shots, standing on ledges, dangling feet over canyons, living the daring adventure life. But nature doesn't care about Instagram captions. Park officials believe one of them slipped while setting up for a photo, causing both to tumble more than 800 feet. There were no guardrails. Winds were strong. Their tripod was found near the edge. They'd even posted warnings about those very cliffs just days before. The world mourned them, but also shook its head. Because it wasn't a freak accident. It was the most predictable outcome possible. And tragically, they weren't the only ones. Hundreds have died this way, all for a photo. Ben Nevis Blizzard, 2019, dressed for a walk, not a mountain. Scotland's Ben Nevis may not look deadly on paper, just over 4,400 feet. A lot of tourists treat it like a casual afternoon walk, but its weather, absolutely savage. In March 2019, 4 university students from Bradford decided to hike up dressed in jeans, sneakers, and city jackets. There were multiple avalanche warnings in effect. Locals warned them not to go. They went anyway. As they climbed, fog and freezing temps swept in. They lost the trail and wandered straight into a notorious danger zone, the Five-Finger Gully. One student slipped, triggering an avalanche that carried 3 of them hundreds of feet down the mountain. Only one survived, clinging to a ledge with a dying phone battery long enough to call for help. The others were found frozen and broken the next morning. Every system had worked. The alerts were issued. People had warned them. But belief that nothing bad will happen, that's the deadliest mindset of all. The terrain on Ben Nevis can flip in minutes, from a postcard view to zero visibility. And these students had no GPS, no avalanche gear, not even proper boots. Rescuers said they were shocked at how underprepared they were, calling it a disaster that was walking uphill from the moment they stepped out of the car. The group had posted cheerful selfies early that morning. Smiles, snow, and total confidence. But that confidence turned into confusion when the clouds rolled in. They weren't mountaineers. They were tourists who thought a trail map and mobile signal would be enough. It wasn't. The rescue team reached the survivor just before nightfall. His hands were too frozen to dial again. If they'd arrived 30 minutes later, he might have been the 4th body. Ben Nevis claims lives almost every year, not because of its height, but because people underestimate it. There's a kind of arrogance that creeps in when something looks doable on Google Maps. But a mountain doesn't care about your route plan. It doesn't care that it's your first hike, or that your trainers are comfy, or that you promised your friends you'd make it back for dinner. What it does care about is timing, weather, and respect. That day, the mountain made no exceptions, and it rarely does. Every one of these stories is tragic, but more than that, they're a reality check. Mountains don't care how experienced you are. They don't care about your Instagram feed, and they definitely don't care about your pride. What matters is humility, patience, preparation, and knowing when to turn around. If this made your palms sweat, good. That means you're paying attention. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss more stories like these. Drop a comment about which case shocked you most. And most importantly, stay safe out there. The mountain isn't going anywhere.